Hello, everyone, and welcome back again. Today we're talking about Exodus chapter 19 in 5 minutes. If this is the first time jumping into one of these studies, we're trying to go through every chapter of the Bible, one per day, until we get through all the chapters of the Bible. So we've made it through Genesis. We've now made it almost halfway through the book of Exodus. So here we are in Exodus chapter 19. So we kind of ask the same questions to every chapter. The who, what, when, where, why, and application question. So as always, let's start off with the when. When did the events of Exodus 19 take place? The children of Israel got out of slavery in Egypt by the power of God in approximately 1491 BC. The events of Exodus chapter 19 took place 3 months after the Hebrews left Egypt, according to chapter 19, verse 1. Our main characters in this chapter, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them because we've already been introduced to them all quite extensively. The first one is the children of Israel. This is the nation of people, God's people who he's leading out of Egypt, and he's leading them to the promised land. They're the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We have Moses, who is God's selected leader for these people, and then we also have Moses, we have Aaron, who's Moses' brother, who God has chosen as a helper, as an aid to Moses in all the work that is required in leading these people. Okay, so then where? The Israelites moved from Rephidim to the wilderness of Sinai in this chapter, and they encamped near Mount Sinai. And you'll be able to see the traditional location of Mount Sinai on the map down in the description. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can get the handout for free on our website that includes the map, tobelikechrist.com. And so now, as we move on to our outline, we only have one section in this chapter, verses 1 through 25. God speaks to Moses and the people from Mount Sinai. So Moses led the Hebrews to a new camp near Mount Sinai, as we just mentioned. God spoke to Moses and he gave him a message for the people. God promised to make Israel into a special nation, his, quote, treasured possession among all peoples, if they would obey his commands. Moses communicated this message to the elders of Israel, and they all agreed that they would obey God. They would kind of enter into this covenant with him. God told Moses that he was going to descend on Mount Sinai, right? God was going to come down on Mount Sinai and speak to Moses in the hearing of all of the people so that they would know that Moses was God's chosen representative. This would give Moses authority. It would legitimize him as God's spokesman. Nobody would ever question again whether or not Moses was the man who they needed to be listening to. This was going to show that, yes, he definitely was. The people were told to consecrate themselves for 3 days and to wash their clothes in preparation for the Lord's presence arriving on Mount Sinai. And when the Lord finally arrived, the people were to approach the mountain, but they were not to touch it. And Moses was told that any man or any animal that touched the mountain was to be killed. So the people did as God instructed them, and they consecrated themselves. And on the 3rd day, Mount Sinai was covered in a thick cloud, lightning, thunder, fire, and smoke. And the text says that the mountain quaked. A loud trumpet blast was heard throughout the camp, and this struck fear into a lot of the people. Moses, as he was instructed, brought the people to the foot of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses up to the top. God repeated his warning that nobody, no man, no animal was supposed to touch the mountain. And Moses said that he had set limits around the mountain so that the people would keep the required distance. And at the end of this chapter, God told Moses to go down the mountain and then to come back up again, but this time to bring his brother Aaron. And so that's where chapter 19 leaves off. We'll talk more about Moses and Aaron on the mountain in the upcoming chapters. Let's finish off with an application. God is somebody to be loved, certainly, but he is also someone to be feared in the sense of reverence and respect. The scene on Mount Sinai would have been frightening, and I think in a lot of ways it was meant to be frightening because it was a display of supernatural and otherworldly power. God was communicating to the Israelites, I think also to us, that he is not somebody to be trifled with. He is holy. We are not holy. He is something different than us in his nature, in his character, and something that demands respect. So in one sense, he is the loving and the merciful Father. In another, he is a terrifying force that demands and deserves reverence and obedience. Unfortunately, a lot of times you'll hear God taught as just all love and nothing else, or all fear and nothing else. He's both, right? But we need to appreciate both attributes. And when we appreciate God's incredible power, his holiness, but how he accompanies all of that with love for people like us who are not incredibly powerful and holy, I think that gives us an even greater appreciation and a greater love for God as we take in that whole picture.